Northeast Tonight, brought to you by Pius Group of Institution, Guwahati.
Hello and welcome to Northeast Tonight, the show that decodes the region. First, the top of the day at this hour, the headlines. In a shocking development, 3 Indian soldiers, including a colonel, martyred in violent face-off with Chinese troops at Galwan in eastern Ladakh. Defense Minister Rajnath Singh reviews situation with Army top brass and External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar briefs Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Setting a record, Assam conducts 10,000 COVID-19 tests in a day. Community level testing begins in Guwahati. Amid COVID crisis, close to 200 Ayush doctors in Manipur go on cease work from June 22nd. Demand pay at par with allopathy doctors working under the National Health Mission. All right, now to tonight's debate. Yes, China has demonstrated its violent intentions. In a shocking development last night, an army colonel and 2 Jawans were martyred during a violent face-off with the Chinese troops at Galwan in eastern Ladakh. Defense authorities have said the incident occurred even as the de-escalation process was underway in the area. Senior military officials from both sides are at the venue to defuse the crisis. Such an incident resulting in the martyrdom of a colonel and 2 other soldiers have taken place along the line of actual control after about 40 years and is therefore both shocking and serious. Defense Minister Rajnath Singh has reviewed the situation with the Army top brass along with External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar and has also briefed the Prime Minister. The incident comes at a time when Beijing has been flexing its muscles with Chinese troops transgressing into at least 4 border points in Ladakh and Sikkim and even pitching tents. China had of course promised to de-escalate the situation by withdrawing its troops following military to military level talks between the 2 nations in the past few days. Monday's violent clashes is different because there was not a bullet fired along the consensus LAC since the 1967 Nathula clashes, as well as an ambush in Arunachal Pradesh in 1975, meaning that the 2 countries had worked out a mechanism to maintain status quo. Now, after so many years, why are the Chinese so aggressive? Do they want to send out signals globally that it's a very strong and powerful nation? Is this an attempt by Beijing to divert domestic attention from its internal power struggles and pressures? Is this an attempt to scuttle a possible international investigation on the COVID-19 origins? To discuss the subject at a very critical juncture tonight, I am joined from New Delhi by Lieutenant General Sanjay Kulkarni, a highly decorated soldier who had commanded a battalion, a brigade and later a division along the line of actual control, one of the soundest military minds in the country. He in fact commanded these areas in both the Arunachal and Ladakh frontiers. Also in New Delhi, I have Mr. Jayadeva Ranade, former Additional Secretary in the Cabinet Secretariat and President, Center for China Analysis and Strategy. From Itanagar, I am joined by Arunachal BJP MP Mr. Tepee Gao, and from Pasighat, I am joined by former MP and Congress MLA Mr. Ninong Ering. Later on the show, we shall present you excerpts from an interview I conducted earlier with Dr. Lobsang Sangay, President of the Central Tibetan Administration or the Tibetan government in exile, on the latest Chinese behavior towards India during the past 5 weeks. Gentlemen, welcome to Northeast Tonight. I'll go straight to Lieutenant General Sanjay Kulkarni in New Delhi. General Kulkarni, welcome to Notice Tonight. A shocking incident in Ladakh. Yes, we are aware of the standoff since the 5th and 6th May night, since the night of May 5th and 6th. But did we expect things to escalate to this level?
Good evening. And I must, at the outset, be saying a very shocking incident. Absolutely shocking. Unprecedented. Something one does not expect a nation like China to behave on. Primarily because we realized that the talks were going on. The talks were paused.
Yeah.
That everything was happening. And at a point of time when de-escalation was taking place, it is at that point of time, at Petrol Point 14, that the troops, the Chinese troops, decided to go back. And then they come back and sort of start manhandling, start fighting, start jostling, and resulting in the martyrdom of the commanding officer and 2 men. Now, you can well imagine the commanding officer martyred primarily because he was ensuring that there wouldn't be any more clashes between the two sides. We don't expect now the talks on the border, especially the military talks starting from the colonel level to brigadier to a major general and then to a corps commander, a lieutenant general level. And all this is resulting in de-escalation. All this, we're getting positive signals coming from the other side. We are seeing things happening at Finger 4, at Pingyangso. We see things happening at Galwan. Everybody is there at Petrol Point 14. And what do we see at night? Just about last night, the jostling starts, which carries on till almost midnight, resulting in all what has happened. Unprecedented. Something that is not expected, and something probably China, I would only say over here, Wasbir, 2 things. One, it looks as an aberration at the ground level, at a very limited. At that point of time, some hot heads probably have done this, and the Chinese would have to say, apologize for what they've done. Second, if that not be an aberration, then it is orchestrated from the highest level. And
Absolutely.
either of it is bad.
Absolutely. General Kulkarni, I'm coming back to you. You have made a very interesting point. If it might be an aberration or it may have been directed at the highest level. I'm coming to the 2 political leaders in a minute, but let me quickly go to Mr. Jaidev Ranade. Mr. Ranade, that area in China is under the command of the Western Theatre Command that looks after entire Ladakh, Sikkim up to Arunachal Pradesh and so on, and which reports directly to the Supreme Commander of the PLA, that is President Xi Jinping. So does it indicate that these kind of incidents has the sanction at the highest level of the Chinese establishment? This is absolutely unprecedented, as General Kulkarni was saying just now.
Well, it is difficult to say right now whether this specific incident of the 15th June night, when there was this violent physical contact or struggle between Indian and Chinese soldiers, in which incident soldiers were killed on both sides and injured on both sides. Whether that was cleared right at the very top or not, but this much is clear, that the entire operation, where the Chinese forces have come up in strength along an over 1,100 kilometer length of our line of actual control in the border, has been cleared from the very top. That in itself should imply that the Chinese have a larger design and they are not going to withdraw just after settling a few minor points here and there. So I think we are in, as I think I mentioned in your channel earlier, for a protracted stay here, for a protracted confrontation. But if I may just add one more line, the statement coming out of the Western Theatre Command this afternoon or this evening raises the ante, raises the level, because it reasserts for the second time since all this trouble started that China has for long had sovereignty over the entire Galwan Valley.
Absolutely.
And then it warns us to discipline our frontline troops and keep them on our side of the line of actual control. It also says, it accuses them of continuously coming back and forth and causing problems and confrontation. So I think the temperatures have, of course, gone up with this at the troops level, but the Western Theatre Command has also upped the ante.
Mr. Tepee Gao, BJP MP from Arunachal Pradesh, someone who has been sensitizing not only the public but also the government on the dangers posed by the Chinese adventurism along the line of actual control. Welcome, Mr. Tepee Gao. What is your first reaction on the shocking incident in Ladakh where 3 of our brave soldiers have been martyred?
Wasbir ji, first of all, I pay homage and condolence to all our brave soldiers who have sacrificed their life for the motherland. It is well planned by the Chinese that Sudhir ji and Rana Dev ji have already said. I personally know right from Nubra, Pangong Lake, Chuchul, Demchok, I personally visited that place. The China has exposed their weakness, their economically weakness, their politically weakness because of this COVID. The entire world have pressurizing their mistakes and they are missed it. So they are trying to find out a way to confront with one of the neighboring country, that is India. Especially this incident, Galwan Valley, and I know this place. This is a way directly, Kulkarni Sahab will also know it. It will directly connect to Karakoram Pass. And we have got our Dolat Beg, all this airport, we have got their establishment.
Yeah.
So they are planned and they are planning. But I would like to say, Wasbir ji, China should remember one thing, that today under the leadership of Modi ji, the Bharat is not 1962 today. This is the modern, well-equipped, well-tactics, arms, militarily. In all front, the China should not test this kind of activities along the border. But I would like to say that under the leadership of Rajnath ji and Modi ji, we should plan and we will plan that China will face and China will see
right
that the India is not of
hold
that
your
1962.
Tepee Gao ji, please hold your thoughts.
Bharat.
Hold your thoughts. We have a breaking news coming in at this point in time. The Ministry of External Affairs has said that Indian activities were within India's side of the line of actual control. The MEA further said that China changed the LAC unilaterally. In a statement, the Ministry of External Affairs said that, and I quote, "Given its responsible approach to border management, India is very clear that all activities are always within the Indian side of the line of actual control. We expect the same from the Chinese side." The MEA added that the violent face-off happened as a result of an attempt by Chinese side to unilaterally change the status quo in the area. Both sides suffered casualties that could have been avoided had agreement at higher level been scrupulously followed by the Chinese side. Well, that is a statement coming in from the MEA. It has said that all Indian activities were within the Indian side of the LAC and said that China has unilaterally altered or changed the LAC. This is a statement that the MEA has said. And of course, this now clarifies the fact that the Chinese allegation that the Indians had crossed over into the Chinese side and so on. This was the charge leveled by the Chinese earlier in the day today. And this breaking news coming in with the MEA clarifying this has set at rest everything that the Chinese have been claiming, saying that whatever has happened is all activities were within the Indian side of the LAC, and they're saying that we expect the same from the Chinese side. The MEA also added that the violent face-off happened as a result of an attempt by the Chinese side to unilaterally change the status quo. And one significant factor, another significant point that this statement says is that both sides suffered casualties. And of course, reports coming in, we are yet to get full confirmation of that. There are at least 5 Chinese soldiers who have also died. These are according to media reports, and let me clarify that there is no confirmation to that effect, but we are very soon expecting something on that officially. Going back to the debate, let me go to Mr. Ninong Ering, Congress leader, another political leader from Arunachal Pradesh and the Northeast, who has been constantly raising his voice on these kind of adventures and misadventures by the Chinese side. Mr. Ninong Ering, your first reaction to the shocking incident in Ladakh where 3 of our brave soldiers had to sacrifice their lives and attain martyrdom.
They have sacrificed their lives for our country. But we all know issues that have come up with every day. Even in the television. All these times.
Okay, we have got a very bad audio line. I'm sorry, I cannot continue with that audio line. I will request to connect on Ninong Ering on a different line if possible, or reconnect. General Kulkarni, this is absolutely. Do you think this can be a military tactic? We are saying that General Kulkarni, Okay, General Kulkarni is not in the line. We have got disconnected. Mr. Ranade, I mean, how is it different? How is it serious, this situation? Do you see any different? Is it a different kind of a situation? Because in the last 40 years, this has been the incident where we had to lose lives along the LSC, and that to senior military officers and 3 soldiers at that.
Correct. It is the first time that we've seen this since 1975. And it is very serious. It raises the tension levels immediately. That is the first point. But the manner in which it happened, now I'm not 100% certain of the details, but what one gathers from other media sources or media reports is that our officers, the colonel and his 2 men, plus a few others, had gone there by pre-arrangement. They had gone there to oversee a certain form of disengagement that was going to take place with the Chinese, and it was arranged that they would go there. So for this to happen, after that, it is a very deceitful action by the Chinese, because our side would obviously have not been prepared.
Right.
Secondly, let us not forget that the troops up there are trained personnel, and they're trained in unarmed combat. So it's not just ordinary people who are having a violent fight. It is trained personnel who are fighting. And for such injuries, as we are being told have happened, for the deaths of 3 people and probably some more injuries, it was something obviously very, very serious.
Okay. We'll try to connect with Ninong Ering through WhatsApp. We can connect through WhatsApp if possible. That may give us a better connection. General Kulkarni, General Kulkarni, I mean, military to military level, there was, as you have said, there was even discussions at the level of the Major General and later the Corps Commander. And this incident takes place when there was apparently de-escalation was going on. Is it normal practice to expect this kind of a violent and aggressive behavior when the troops are actually engaged in diffusing the crisis and de-escalating? That is why it is different.
Yeah. Wasbir, if you ask me, I think it's absolutely, as I said initially, it's unprecedented. It has happened once earlier, or rather, I would say 2013, when the Prime Minister was visiting, a similar kind of incident. It was diffused, and finally the visit went through. It happened in 2015 when the President was to visit up there. Again, it was diffused. It happened in 2017, Doklam, which continued for a long time, resulting in a Prime Minister at Wuhan making an arrangement and agreement that these kind of incidents will not happen. Now you find that this kind of an incident has occurred for the first time. Chinese are trying to assert or are trying to give a messaging or are trying to give a political statement that probably it gives an indication that China is on back foot. China has realized that it has got maligned the entire world because of the Wuhan virus. China feels economically it is not doing as well as it should because much that it has tried to put its economy in shape, but who would pick up the products that are manufactured because the world over there is locked down. There are no ships, no aircraft, nothing flying anywhere. That's enough. Yet another thing, it finds itself cornered by the United States.
Right.
The United States have been condemning China across the world. It finds that even in India, all its investments are to be monitored and to be seen, which China feels that, well, everything now seems to be exposed. And above the top of it, the Indian leadership in the in the WHO seems to give it a feeling that it is difficult.
So
They are not able to sustain themselves.
So General, you agree that this could be actually a diversionary tactic by the Chinese, having global pressure. 130 countries are joining hands to demand an investigation into the origin of the corona, internal power struggles within the Chinese establishment. So you more or less agree that it could be actually a diversionary tactic.
100%. 100%. It is a diversionary tactic. You know, what the Chinese are attempting to do, they've realized that along the Indian Ocean, the real pressure that the Chinese are feeling is in the Indian Ocean. They realize that Malacca Strait is a choke point which they have yet not through with the roads which they are wanting to make from Gwada right up to Khunjara Pass and beyond, going to Kashgar. So the energy lines, they are being disrupted. The Chinese know that which is the way that they can convey to the world. And you find Global Times, what is it doing? A propaganda machine.
Right.
It is trying to convey to the world that China has arrived, that China has all of it can, even at the high altitude. So it is trying to pressurize India to toe the line of China.
Okay, I'm coming to you, Mr. Ranade, but Mr. Tepee Gao, I don't know whether the line with Mr. Ninong Ering is through or not. My producers have to tell me that. You know, Mr. Tepee Gao, you know, Arunachal Pradesh, you have seen a long standoff. When the Kargil war was being fought on the northern parts of the country, when the Kargil war was being fought, the Chinese tried to build pressure points in Tawang area in Arunachal Pradesh. There was a 75-day standoff. And for your information and for the information of my viewers, General Kulkarni, who is on the show today, was commanding a battalion. He was almost in an eyeball-to-eyeball situation with the Chinese. He will correct me if I am wrong. I'll go to him a little later. Tepee Gao ji, so our vigil has to be mounted, do you think? We have to be extra alert?
I have already told everybody that today also I am clarifying this my stand. We should not concentrate towards the Ladakh regions only. Already they have tested us in Sikkim. Today the Arunachal is left, and we need to be alert along the border of this Arunachal Pradesh with the Tibet-China border, because they have lot of activities along Arunachal border also. And they will never accept the actual line of control, what our MEA has already mentioned, that they divert actual line of control in this Galwan Valley also. Even in Arunachal, whether it is in the Sikkim, whether it is Himachal, Kalafani, now it is taken by Nepal, whether it is in the Upper Imkim and Lower Imkim and of that Uttarakhand. So the India, under the leadership of Narendra Modi ji and Rajnath ji, the whole of the China border should be alert. We should prepare any kind of consequence, because you can trust anybody, but we can't trust Chinese.
Ninong Ering ji, are you in agreement? I think no one will disagree with Mr. Tepee Gao has said. And your first reactions to today's incident, last night's incident. Ninong Ering.
We have seen the news, like I told you. I don't know why this connectivity is wrong, because I am actually in a very interior village in the valley, which the village is in some country. So, but actually, why I am saying that there should be no compromise on India's security and territorial integrity, that including Sikkim and Arunachal Pradesh. Of course, Mr. Tepee Gao has got a very vast experience. I personally know him since the last parliament also. In the previous term, when he was there, he has always raised this issue, not only him, but even Mr. Kiran Rijiju also. But what I wanted to ask or put on the government, that why, after 50, you can say 50 years or five decades, this, kind of a martyrdom has taken place. We never had this issue, especially in, like I said, in Tawang or even after the 1962 war. It was a very peaceful area. And even now we want peace. But that does not mean that we have to be underestimated. What I have seen through the news, it is very unfortunate. Native people who are really guarding our frontiers. But you can imagine, where has gone the Chappan inch Sina? That I would like to know.
Right.
Both of them have been bombed. That is Mr. Rajnath Singh has just called a meeting with the army officers. It's nice, good. He's picking up the issue, good. He's called Mr. Jaishankar, good. Now, I have written letters to Mr. Jaishankar even about 3 months back on this COVID issue also. I said that, see, China is just trying to, differ from its main motive.
Right.
So all the countries are against them. So that is what they want. That, okay, let us escape. They have their own problems in their own country. All the, they have got all the parties also, they are disintegrating.
Right.
So that is the reason they
right.
want diversion.
I am coming back to you. Mr. Ranade, what kind of a response now do you expect from New Delhi? Because this is not an ordinary transgression. We have about 400 transgressions in a year, but this is not one of them. This is what we have seen in the last 5 weeks in Ladakh and Sikkim.
Certainly, it's not one of them. It's very different. The manner in which the forces were arranged, the length of the border which they covered, the strength in which they came, it certainly was very different, and it signaled that they have some other larger intentions and objectives. I think the first indication of Delhi's reaction to particularly the violent incident that took place last night, where people were killed and injured on both sides, has been firm. It is stated very clearly, very categorically, that we have been on our side of the line of actual control, thereby responding directly to the statement by the Western Theatre Command, saying that we have crossed the actual line of control, as they put it. We have been operating on their side and going back and forth. So I think that position has been very clearly and unequivocally stated. They've also said that they expect the Chinese to stay on their side. So I think our position is being laid out. I'm waiting to see what the army statement will be. But I think as far as we are concerned, we're indicating that we are not going back. We're not pulling back from where we are, and we do not recognize Galwan as a territory of the Chinese.
All right. That's a very, very interesting point made by Mr. Rana there. General Kulkarni, before I go for a quick break, what do you think? Same question goes to you. What kind of a response do you expect? Now, we have been told in that army statement that senior military officials from both nations are at the venue trying to defuse the crisis. Now, generally, in this kind of a situation, how are things diffused? Can you give us a step-by-step possibility at this point in time?
China respects strength. That is the first thing. You must stand your ground. There's no question. Chinese believe and are firm believers and followers of Sun Tzu, who has all along, and they believe in that the supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without a fight. If this is what the Chinese believe in, and the Chinese will be constantly testing waters to see where does their adversary stand. In this particular context, we must hold firm. We must not let down our guards. We must not be complacent. We must be willing, if required, to be able to give, a fight if required. The first and the foremost thing is to diffuse the tension by talks. Neither China nor India would want a military confrontation.
Absolutely.
China knows India is not 1962. China is firmly in belief that yes, And whatever be your strength, after all, at any point, you cannot apply your entire force. So there is no way we can stand up to China at any point in time.
Absolutely, absolutely. The India up to 2020 is not the India of 1962. China knows that, yet China is indulging in misadventurism. We'll discuss as to why China, what are the compulsions of the Chinese to engage in this kind of a behavior. I'll go for a short break. Don't go away. I'll be right back. Welcome back. General Kulkarni, you said that the Chinese respect strength. Now, when the Kargil war was going on, in Tawang area of Arunachal Pradesh, the Chinese was building up pressure points. You were the commanding officer there at that point in time, if I'm not wrong. And you faced up to the Chinese not for 1-2 days, but if I'm not mistaken, for about more than 2 months. So, is this a usual tactic by the Chinese to create pressure points at different places? And if so, should we be on extra alert in Arunachal Pradesh at this point in time?
There is no doubt that we must be alert on all fronts. There is no doubt that we must be able to stand firm and hold our ground. There is no doubt that China must not be allowed to buy time to be able to do something at the point of its own choosing. So it is essential that wherever we are, we must hold ground. Another thing is capacity building in all these areas take time. Intentions can change overnight. The Chinese have been exercising on the Tibetan plateau for the last 6 months. Whether it is a propaganda or but they are on the Tibetan plateau. And therefore, from the kind of infrastructure that they have developed on the Tibetan plateau is quite indicative of them being able to apply at a point of their choosing within a short time frame. So that we must keep in mind. And therefore, as you rightly said, imagine it has Pakistan, which always boasts of a friend, which has friendship is higher than the Himalayas, deeper than the ocean, and sweeter than the honey. And during the Kargil operation, maybe just as to be able to convey to Pakistan that we stand by you and will not be able to lift troops from east towards Kargil, they did what they did at Yangtze. And they kept telling us that this is their grazing ground. How could it be their grazing ground? And what is the explanation they gave? The explanation is that wherever the yak goes for those few summer months and grazes, it is their area. I said, our yaks are grazing here for the last 12 months. Oh, what are you talking about grazing area? Isn't it our grazing area? A yak is an animal which will find grass and go there. Doesn't mean that so this kind of Chinese are constantly and I would just as a matter of a lighter interest, I would just inform, because you have on the panel even a Congress person. It was very nice and a very humorous thing. Mr. Kesri, who once happened to have been their treasurer and became the foreign minister, was to go to China and he was being briefed. And he kept his eyes closed and everybody thought that he was probably gone to sleep. He wasn't. He said, I've heard, I've understood. He said, it is like the DTC driver, दाहिने हाथ दिखाता है और बाएं जाता है. So this is what he said with the Chinese behavior. And so this is a thing which we have to understand, that Chinese have to be dealt with in a different manner. You can't, even now in this particular, I would say a very violent clash has taken place. You don't understand their language. You don't know what is he trying to say. You might be conveying it in your language. He's trying to convey in his language. And therefore, his having crossed and his having changed the LSE unilaterally is not understood.
Right.
So these are all perceptions. And therefore, it has to be dealt with, and talks are the best thing to be dealing with.
Absolutely. Tepee Gao ji, India is a country, whenever there is a crisis, despite our vibrant democracy, our political differences, the country always stands together. Irrespective of which political party is in power, who is the opposition, that is not important. What is important, we have to give a message to the Chinese as well as all their friends and followers that we are one today. So, what is the message that you would expect?
I expect from my countrymen, my elder brother Nindong Iring INC MLA, former union minister is on the line. I would like to tell our Congress friend, in spite of questioning what Modi is doing, what Rajnath is doing, what MEA is doing, we should first condemn the act of China who have killed and murdered cold-bloodedly in spite of firing bullets with iron rod and stones. They have beheaded our colonel and 2 soldiers in Golwan Valley. All political party must condemn the act of Chinese PLA. In spite of questioning
let me clarify.
the Prime Minister, Defense Minister. So,
Let me clarify. Tepee Gao ji.
Wasbir.
Let me
So,
clarify. You have
we
said
should- we should-
our colonel has been killed, but we don't know whether he has been beheaded. That is not correct. Let's not talk about that. Our colonel has been martyred. I think that is enough. Yes, carry on.
No. The way they kill, martyred our soldiers without bullet, without fighting each other, with arms and ammunition, it's a shameful act of the Chinese
Yes.
PLA.
Yes.
So all political party must join together condemning this act.
Right.
The martyr should be saluted by each and every
Absolutely,
political
no
party
doubt-
of this
no
country.
doubt about that. Let me
This
go
is
to-
an crucial situations. So we must stand together against the act of PLA today. The Chinese government has been exposed by their act. They are under
Absolutely.
pressure of the world
Community.
economically,
Yeah. Let me-
politically,
Right.
all because of
Right.
all this.
Let me
they
go
are
to-
acting
let
all
me
these
go to
activities
Mr.
on the border.
Let me go to Mr. Ninongering very quickly. Your response before I go to Mr. Ranade.
Thank you very much for giving me. I don't want to give details or the discussion because I think General Sultani has done a very much better job in that, and of course, they also got giving for this. My only take is that we in the last discussion also, we had said that we should boycott the Chinese food. But here there's an aggression going on. And our soldiers have been martyred. And here again, but we are making a government is very shameful that the government is making a contract of 1,166 crores to a Chinese company known as Sangay Tunnel Engineering Company. This is kind of a joke, that here we are okay. We are not saying that we should not have war with China, but like I will support Mr. Sangay now this and saying that yes, we have to be united in the in uniting and always fighting for our country. But party aside, I just say that हम लोग इसमें चुप्पी नहीं बैठ सकते. We cannot just keep quiet. See,
Absolutely.
so this is my message that we have to be united too. But again, it should not be a satire. Here we are saying we must boycott Chinese food, and here we are in a contract with the Shanghai Tunnel Engineering by the central government. So
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, you have made your point. You have made your point, Mr. Ranade. The days ahead, do you think will be India has to come up with a calibrated, nuanced response? Because we all know that nobody is interested in a war, but at the same time, we have to deal with the Chinese in a very firm manner.
We have to think out of the box. We have to think innovatively. Just saying that no one wants a war is not adequate. What we have to do is, while not going in for a full-fledged war, we also have to ensure that we don't yield ground and in that manner encourage the Chinese into greater adventurism in the next few months or years. So we have to think out of the box. We have to be very clear on 2 or 3 things. Firstly, that we don't yield ground to the Chinese. Secondly, that we make them feel that there will be pain if they don't back off and if they keep applying such pressure. Where the pain is to be inflicted and how it is to be inflicted is what we have to think about. And the third is we have to make it clear to them that it will have consequences in various fields. In other words, we have to have, as they call it, a whole of the government approach and rethink our entire policy towards China.
Absolutely. Final comments from you, General Kulkarni. The days ahead, how do we respond? What should be our strategy now?
We must hold firm. We must do what best we can do is to hold ground and convey to the Chinese in no uncertain terms that should you mess around, you're going to get it back very badly. Do not treat or do not even have it in your mind that we are a nation who can be walked over. We are not a pushover army at all. So militarily, it knows that, and they can be. I also look at it that there will not be a military confrontation. They'll not look at it, but they will keep pinpricking this way, and therefore we must hold and we must build our capacities and capabilities. We must not give in to the whims and fancies of do not do this infrastructure or anything. As much as it is in our area, it is our responsibility. What we do is our this thing, and talks must be continued from a position of strength, and they must be told in no uncertain terms that, look, this kind of a behavior is not acceptable, and should you be doing it, there are consequences for this kind of a behavior. If, again I repeat, if this is an aberration at the local level, it should be seen as an aberration, and talks must continue, much that we have lost lives, which is something which should not have happened. But if at any point of time there's a feeling that it is orchestrated from the top, then we might realize keep our gunpowder dry.
Absolutely. We need to keep our powders dry, hold firm, not concede ground to the Chinese and make them feel the pain. That is the general consensus of this debate. Thank you, gentlemen, for participating this day on a very, very critical day. Thank you very much indeed. Viewers, I had spoken to Dr. Lobsang Sangay earlier in the day. Earlier, I had spoken to Dr. Lobsang Sangay, who is the president of the Central Tibetan Administration, or the Tibetan government in exile. Let's listen in to what Dr. Lobsang Sangay, a very, very hugely popular leader among the Tibetan diaspora, had to say on the aggressive Chinese behavior on the past few days. Let's listen in. I have with me today Dr. Lobsang Sangay, the president of the Central Tibetan Administration, or the Tibetan government in exile, joining me from Dharamsala. Dr. Sangay is a hugely popular Tibetan leader representing the Tibetan diaspora around the world. Dr. Lobsang Sangay, welcome to Northeast Live.
Thank you very much. Good to be on your show on Northeast Live. Good to see you again.
Absolutely good to see you again too, Dr. Sangay. You know, during the past few weeks, we have once again witnessed aggressive behavior of the Chinese military in Ladakh and Sikkim. Does this surprise you, the military adventurism coming at a time when India is directing its resources to battling the COVID pandemic?
I would like to say no and yes. No in the sense, when Tibet was occupied, Mao Zedong and Chinese leaders said Tibet is the palm and Ladakh, Sikkim, Nepal, Bhutan, and Arunachal are 5 fingers. So once they occupied the palm, they are coming after 5 fingers. So the adventurism and incursions in Ladakh and Sikkim are nothing surprising for us. In 2017, Doklam happened. Now it's happening in Ladakh. The infrastructure build-up of Chinese military, it's huge in both the areas. So this is nothing surprising. So we've been saying all this time that after the occupation of Tibet, what happened to us could happen to all the neighboring countries, including India. Now, you see what's happening in India, or the borders of India, is what we have been saying for the last 60 years. So in a way, the whole world is focused on dealing with the coronavirus pandemic, which originated in China. And that's where the attention should be. And all these incursions are absolutely unnecessary and very insensitive at this time of the year, but Chinese government is doing it.
Now you see, Dr. Sangay, many around the world look at this Beijing's posturing as some kind of a panic reaction. After all, more than 120 nations now want a global investigation on the origin of the COVID-19 virus.
That's true. WHO, which is normally neutral, and some of the officials could be China-leaning, or China-sympathetic officials, have also resolved to investigate the origin of the coronavirus, which obviously happened in Wuhan, the city of China. So, given the global attention and pressure on China, and Chinese leadership seems to be a bit nervous as well. So from what I hear in Tibet, all the monasteries are shut down. Monks and nuns are not allowed to venture out of the district. They have to seek permission. Out of the state, you have to seek permission from the state. So you can clearly see they are not allowing even Tibetans to move from district to district and from state to state. So that shows the paranoia, or the insecurity in China. So this is the external pressure of WHO and the trust deficit of pandemic that has generated against China, and the internal pressure, to the Chinese leadership in dealing with coronavirus and other internal issues. They are trying to divert the attention by, what they call externalizing the problem with this border incursion in India, and also, in South China Sea and various other places.
Right. Are you among those who is prepared to believe that the novel coronavirus is a man-made virus produced by the Chinese, possibly at a lab in Wuhan? Do you see it as a biological weapon that was leaked perhaps to the world?
Now, it's difficult to say. Let the WHO-led scientists investigate this issue thoroughly and come out with the objective report. And having said that, but there are some indications that whether it's intentionally or not, the virus is leaked from the biolab which was in Wuhan, because some of the State Department's reports say that when some of the staff members and scientists visited, the infrastructure, the quality control, the safety measures are not in good place. So intentionally or not, it could have been leaked from the lab. But let the scientists of WHO confirm this, and let the whole world know. But definitely, the coronavirus originated in Wuhan, the city of China, which Chinese government is trying to deny.
Absolutely. Coming back to the aggressive Chinese military posturing, the Indian military or the Indian security establishment today is not that which we had in 1962. Our military machine today is advanced leaps and bounds. The Chinese are well aware of this, and still they regularly create situations along the line of actual control that can well lead to a sharp confrontation. Why so? Why so, according to you?
Look, I think, China has this ambition to become a world leader. Unfortunately, if you look at the, a global transformation when the world leader comes up, whether it was the British or before that, any empire, there has to be a flexing of muscle, and which leads to war, and then, a leader comes up. So, that's the story of First World War, Second World War, or the British rule, or before that, right, Roman Empire, so on and so forth. So Chinese government is flexing its muscle, military muscle, and India happens to be the largest populated country in Asia, which can go toe-to-toe as far as, population is concerned, as far as, military capacity is concerned. So I think, it could be testing its water. But definitely, since the occupation of Tibet, since the border between Tibet and India changed to India and China, all these tensions have come, and it will continue to come till Tibet issue is resolved.
Now, you have been saying in the last couple of days, during several interviews, you have been saying, Dr. Sangay, that you would expect India to do a little bit more. What do you mean by that, actually?
Well, China and the Chinese government clearly says Tibet is one of their core issues, so very important. Xi Jinping is on the record in saying that security and stability of China is dependent on security and stability of Tibet. Now, for various reasons, historical relationship, cultural relationship, our Tibetan alphabets, our religion,
Right.
all are associated. Some originated from India, right? So we have all these factors and the bond that we have, and most importantly, geopolitically,
Yeah.
Tibet is vital. So hence, India also should say, if China, Tibet is core-issue for you, then for India also Tibet is a core issue. Let's resolve this issue of Tibet, and then make Tibet a zone of peace and make this border a demilitarized zone, as His Holiness Dalai Lama said. Then there will be a perpetual peace between the two of the largest populated countries and two of the largest military capacities. So that's what we say. And then when His Holiness says about zone of peace and demilitarized border, he's essentially referring to historical relationship between Tibet and India. Tibet was the buffer zone between India and China, and the border from Arunachal to the whole of Northeast, the border of Tibet barely had even policemen. Forget about military and border security force. They were barely policemen because border was so peaceful, it was demilitarized, right? So hence we must return back to that relationship to have perpetual peace between Tibet and India and China.
Are you convinced that China is embarking on aggressive maneuvers towards India and Hong Kong primarily to divert its own people's attention from the situation at home, or from internal pressures triggered perhaps by US actions insofar as trade and business are concerned?
Both. As I said, this is China's age-old plan. Tibet is the palm, and then five fingers are Ladakh, Sikkim, Nepal, Bhutan, and Arunachal. So the border incursions will happen. Pressure on Nepal will happen. Sudden changes are happening in Nepal, as we all know, mainly because of the Chinese government's pressure, right? So it's more leaning towards China than towards India. So all these, changes in the neighboring countries are because of Chinese government pressure, and all happened after the occupation of Tibet. That's number one. So that will continue. Number two, at this given time, China is under tremendous pressure. Within China, some people are saying the Chinese leadership did not handle coronavirus, trade relationship with America, and also with Europe, right? Trust deficit that has happened. Certain Chinese business people are also looked as new colonialists in African continent as well, right? So all these pressure are building within China.
Well, the full interview with Dr. Lobsang Sangay, the head of the exiled Tibetan government, coming up at 11 tonight, 11 p.m. tonight. With this, it's a wrap of this edition of Northeast Tonight. Thanks for watching. Good night and goodbye.